All right, so sometimes when we go to write the equation of a circle, we're given different information. We're not given the center and the radii or the radius value. We're given just 2 points. And when we do that, we have a couple ways of figuring out how to get the center and the length of the radius. So we're going to show you that. One option is we can just do, like at the top of your notes, you'll notice that you've got your distance formula and midpoint up here, which you worked with in, I think, 8th grade. So that's one way we can do it. And so if I wanted to, I could take my diameter or my 2 endpoints. So remember, the diameter is all the way across this circle. So I could take those 2 endpoints and I could just plug it into the distance formula to find out what the diameter length is. And so I could say, I'm going to do the distance. I'm going to take the x values and subtract them and square it, plus the y values, subtract and square. And that's one option. And so when I do that, I'm going to get square root. So -1 minus 5 is -6. -6 squared is 36. And then 5 minus -3 is really 5 plus 3, which is 8. And 8 squared is 64. So that I see that the square root of 100, 36 plus 64 is 100. So I get my diameter being 10. Now, again, remember the diameter, if I'm looking at that, I'm looking at the diameter all the way across, which is 10. Now, when I look at an equation, I really just need the radius, which is half of it. So I know in this case that the radius is 5. And then I could use midpoint formula to find this exact point. So if I do midpoint formula, again, that's adding your x's together. So -1 plus 5 divided by 2, and then add your y's together, 5 plus -3 divided by 2. And so if I do that, we'll get the midpoint being -1 plus 5 is 4 over 2. 5 plus -3 is 2 over 2, which makes my midpoint, which is my center of my circle, 2, 1. And so then you would use that to write your equation. And so you would have x minus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared is equal to 5 squared, or 25. So that's one option, using those 2 formulas. And if you're comfortable using those formulas, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Another option is to draw that out in a coordinate plane and use Pythagorean theorem. And so let's show you that. So I'm going to erase this portion. And we're going to do this a little bit different now. All right. So what I'm saying with that is, if I have a grid, if I draw myself a little coordinate plane and I try to figure out where those dots are, I can count it a little bit different. So I can say, all right, so here's my coordinate plane. And I could say, well, if I'm going to go -1 and then up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my first point. And then I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down 3. Here's my second point. Okay, so one option is I could figure out what the distance is from these 2 points. Okay, and I can do that by using Pythagorean theorem, showing that I would go down and across. So I'm going down 5, 2, 3. No, I'm not. I'm going across, down 6. Let's see. Oh, how come I didn't do -1? It should go through that point. All right. So then if I'm looking at the up and down, then that's down 8. So you went down 5 and then down 3 more. And then if I'm going across, I went over 5 plus 1 more, so I went over 6. And so I could do the same thing where I've got a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, which is the length, or the length of the diameter. right? Because we really have a circle that's going to cross through those 2 points. So as you look, this is still 100. So when I take the square root, I still get that it's being 10. All right, now to find the center, I could still do that same idea. The center is the halfway mark. So if this is 8, then I'm going to go down 4. So if I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, then I'm here, right? This is down 4, and then I'm going to go over 3. So this is 1, 2, 3. So that makes my center be about here. So that means my center is at 1, 2, and then we just do the same thing. So I would have x minus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared is equal to, and again, if my diameter is 10, then my radius is half of that. So I would have 5 squared, or 25. All right. So that's another way of looking at the same problem. Just depends on what's easier for you. All right. And then, actually, I guess I didn't need to erase that, but oh well. All right, so then when we look at the next one, it's going to be kind of the same thing. We can do it one of two ways. We can either use, if we know the center's at the origin, which is 0, 0, and we know it contains a 0.35, I have a couple options. I either can draw it like we did before, or we can find the length using distance formula like we did before. So if I do distance formula, I'm going to do the square root, and I'm going to go 0 minus 3 squared plus 0 minus 5 squared, which is going to give us 3 squared, which is 9, plus 5 squared, which is 25, which gives us the square root of 34. And that's my distance, or my length from the origin to the point. So if it's from the origin to the point, that's really your radius value. Okay, so this is really the same thing as our radius in this case. So then when we go to write it, we would have x squared plus y squared is equal to the square root of 34 squared, but when I square a square root, it just makes the root go away. So we're left with 34. All right, so that's one option. So as we think about that, another option is, yeah, we still could have done that in the grid. We know that this is 0, 0, and we know that we have a point at 3, 5. All right, and so then if we draw our right triangle down, we could do the same thing. Here's 3, here's 5. It's a right triangle, so this would be 3 squared plus 5 squared is equal to r squared. And so when I add those together, I get 34 is equal to r squared. So r is equal to the root 34. And then the same thing's going to happen. I can put it into my equation, and then it's going to give me the same equation. So I've got x squared plus y squared because it starts at the origin. And then whether I do Pythagorean theorem or I do distance formula, I still get the radius being 34. All right, because I squared, because this is r squared. And so when I square a square root, it gives me 34. All right, so that's our second video on 8.5.